Have you ever felt the profound, almost spiritual pull of love? That deep desire to merge your very soul with another, to dissolve the boundaries between you and them until only we remains? It's a sacred yearning, a vibration that echoes through the cosmos. But have you also felt the chilling paradox within that desire? The subtle terror that in this complete integration, the very essence of your freedom, the sovereignty of your own spirit, might be extinguished forever? This isn't just a fleeting thought. It is a deep, resonant truth that many souls feel but dare not speak. If this divine contradiction has ever echoed in the quiet chambers of your heart, then you have arrived at a place of profound awakening. Recognize that you are not alone in this feeling. This is a sign that your higher self is calling you to a deeper understanding. Let us know in the comments if this frequency resonates with your journey, and consider sharing this message with another soul who may be navigating this very path. Liking and subscribing ensures that these transmissions of truth continue to find those who are ready to receive them. Let me speak to you directly, from one soul to another, about the nature of love as it has been presented to us in this modern age. Let us pull back the curtain on the grand illusion. The great philosopher Simone de Beauvoir, a woman who dedicated her life to dissecting the very fabric of our societal roles, offered a chillingly accurate insight. She spoke of love not as a force that liberates the spirit of man, but as one that domesticates it, taming the wild, sovereign energy within and molding it into something predictable, something manageable. Let that truth settle into your being for a moment. Imagine a vast, sterile slaughterhouse, not of flesh and bone, but of spirit and will. See the long, orderly lines of men, their faces etched with a hopeful, yet naive, anticipation. They are willingly queuing up, clutching bouquets of societal expectations and hearts full of programmed desires, marching toward a fate they mistake for destiny. They believe they are heading toward union, toward completion, but they are in fact being led to a place where their core essence will be systematically dismantled, where their divine spark will be rendered into a palatable, socially acceptable form. This isn't a condemnation. It is an observation of a spiritual tragedy playing out on a global scale. The architect of this system has sold a vision of love that requires a sacrifice of the self. And countless men have offered their very souls upon this altar, believing it to be the ultimate act of devotion. They have been taught that to be a good man is to be a tamed man, and that this taming is the highest form of love. Let us journey into the heart of this illusion, this grand mirage of romantic freedom. Picture this in your mind's eye. A man, perhaps someone you know, perhaps a reflection of your past self, falls deeply, irrevocably in love. This is not the fleeting, ephemeral infatuation born from the endless, dopamine-chasing scroll of a dating app, a place where souls are reduced to commodities and connections are as disposable as yesterday's news. No, this is the profound, soul-altering kind of love. The kind that feels like a divine intervention. It's a love that rewires his entire nervous system, changing the very frequency at which his being vibrates. He awakens in the morning with her name on his lips, a silent prayer to an idol he has just created. His ambitions, once vast and stretching toward a horizon of his own making, are now meticulously rearranged, folded, and reshaped to fit her neatly into the blueprint of his future. Every decision, every thought, is filtered through the lens of her potential approval or disapproval. He believes, with a fervor that borders on religious conviction, that this love is the exception to the rule, that it is pure, sanctified, and destined to defy the grim statistics and quiet betrayals that are woven into the very fabric of modern relationships. He sees their connection as a bastion against the chaos of the world, a sacred space untouched by the cynicism of the age. Then, one evening, perhaps over a dinner he has joyfully paid for, a small offering in the grand temple of their love, she utters the 5 words that shatter his reality. I need to find myself. And just like that, with the casual finality of a closing door, the world he has so carefully constructed around her crumbles into dust. The man who built his entire identity, his very sense of self, around this union is left with nothing but the hollow echo of his own being, a self he no longer recognizes, a stranger staring back from the mirror. Understand this with absolute clarity. This is not some random, unfortunate anomaly. This is the rule. This is the predictable outcome of a game whose rules were written long before you were born. The razor-sharp philosopher Simone de Beauvoir, who dissected the corpse of love with the precision of a coroner, warned us of this very future. She envisioned a day when it would finally be possible for a woman to love not from a place of weakness or as an escape from herself, but from a place of immense strength, not to diminish herself, but to find herself, not to abase her being, but to assert it. On that destined day, she prophesied, love would finally become for woman, as it has always been perceived for man, a source of life and not a mortal danger. But here is the unsettling, undeniable truth of our current reality. Modern love has not liberated men or women. It has simply enslaved them both to a new, more subtle, and far more insidious tyranny, the illusion of infinite choice. Let us speak of the digital opium dens of the lonely soul, the dating apps. These platforms are not designed for connection. They are engineered for addiction. Studies, the cold, hard data of our collective heartache, reveal a staggering imbalance. A vast majority, a veritable army of men, around 70%, are locked in a relentless, brutal competition for the fleeting attention of a mere 20% of women. The average user, caught in this digital gladiator arena, swipes their thumb across a screen of faces 224 times a day. Feel the weight of that. That is not a search for a soulmate. That is a textbook case of behavioral conditioning. It is the digital equivalent of a lab rat pressing a lever, hoping for the next pellet of validation, the next brief hit of dopamine. And the most heartbreaking part of this entire charade? Men know, on a deep, intuitive level, that the game is rigged. They feel the inherent injustice, the soul-crushing futility of it all. Yet, like those lab rats, they keep pressing the lever. They keep swiping, endlessly, desperately, hoping that the very next match will be the one to fill the gnawing void left by the last ghosting, the last rejection, the last conversation that faded into an abyss of silence. De Beauvoir, with her prophetic vision, saw this coming from a century away. In her seminal work, The Second Sex, she laid bare the fundamental imbalance of our world. She wrote, "Man is defined as a human being and woman as a female. Whenever she behaves as a human being, she is said to imitate the male. What is the translation for our times? Modern love hasn't freed men from the crushing weight of expectation. It has doubled the burden. Now, you must be vulnerable, but never, ever weak. Be ambitious, but remain perpetually available. Be a protector, but never possessive. It is an impossible tightrope walk, a performance with no end." Do you believe this is a new phenomenon? A sickness born of our digital age? Let me transport you back in time, to the courts of 12th century France, the very birthplace of what we call courtly love. Here, knights, clad in armor, would pledge their undying devotion to noble women, who were often unattainable, married to powerful lords. They would compose heartbreaking poetry, fight in deadly duels, and worship these women from a great, agonizing distance. Does this sound romantic to your conditioned mind? It was a trap. These women were symbols, trophies, forever out of reach. And the knights? They were utterly expendable. Their love was not a genuine connection of souls. It was a performance, a grand, theatrical display of suffering. It was a script, meticulously written by the ruling class, to keep these powerful, martial men striving, suffering, and spending their energy in a futile chase, rather than challenging the established order. Their devotion was channeled into a beautiful, yet ultimately empty, ideal. Now, fast forward to today. The lords are gone, replaced by corporate CEOs and algorithms. The castles are no longer stone fortresses, but meticulously curated Instagram profiles. And the knights? They are still here. They are still burning their money on dates that lead nowhere, burning their time on text messages that are left unread, and burning out in the silent agony of unrequited hope. Here is the secret that no one ever tells you. Love, as it has been sold to you, isn't just difficult. It is designed, by its very nature in this system, to fail. De Beauvoir knew this. She didn't just theorize it. She lived it. For an astonishing 51 years, she and the philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre maintained one of history's most famously unconventional open relationships. Theirs was a partnership they claimed was built on the bedrock of radical honesty and brutal, uncompromising autonomy. But here is the catch: the human truth behind the philosophical ideal. In her private letters, she confessed her own internal torment. She was miserable. "I am torn between the desire to possess and the terror of being possessed," she wrote. And that, right there, is the fundamental curse of modern love. We desperately want to own without the risk of being owned, to need without the vulnerability of appearing needy, and to love without ever risking the devastating pain of loss. But true love, authentic love, is always a risk. And until men confront that profound truth, until they are willing to step off the predetermined path and risk everything for something real, they will remain prisoners of a game they never consciously agreed to play. There's a man sitting in his car right now, somewhere in the world, gripping the steering wheel so tightly that his knuckles have turned white, the blood drained from his fingertips. He is replaying the last conversation he had with her, the one where she delivered the classic, soul-crushing line, "It's not you, it's me." She spoke the words with the same rehearsed, emotionless detachment of someone returning a sweater that didn't quite fit. He knows, in his gut, that it's over. But his brain, his beautifully complex and tragically conditioned brain, will not let go. Why? Because love, real love, the kind that rewires your very nervous system, doesn't just hurt when it's taken away, it creates an addiction. The withdrawal is a physical and spiritual agony. And men, perhaps more than anyone in our society, have been conditioned from birth to crave the very pain that ultimately destroys them. We are taught to see suffering as a noble pursuit, a testament to the depth of our feeling. Simone de Beauvoir understood this dynamic better than most. She watched the brilliant men in her own life, Sartre, her lovers, her students, fall into the exact same trap over and over again. They were addicted to the belief that suffering for love was noble, that the deeper the wound, the purer the emotion. But here is the profound truth that she uncovered, the truth that can set you free. Men don't just fall in love, they fall into trauma loops. They are drawn, like moths to a flame, to the familiar dance of desire and rejection, of hope and despair. Let me tell you a story that you will undoubtedly recognize. A man meets a woman. She is radiant, unpredictable, and alive in a way that makes his own structured, disciplined life feel sterile and colorless by comparison. She pulls him in with intoxicating warmth, then pushes him away with chilling silence. He scrambles to fix it, to prove himself, to earn back the affection that was so freely given just moments before. The cycle repeats itself, hot and cold, reward and punishment, and with every time she pulls away, his brain does something deeply sinister. It rationalizes the pain. "If I just love her harder," he tells himself, "she'll stay." De Beauvoir called this the slavery of devotion. In The Second Sex, she wrote, "The man who is loved is always the master. The woman who loves is always the slave." But here is the modern twist. Modern men are not masters. They are willing slaves. They have been sold the insidious lie that if they just suffer enough, sacrifice enough, and lose themselves enough in the pursuit of a woman's love, they will finally be rewarded with the salvation they seek. And when it inevitably doesn't work, they don't blame the system, the flawed programming, or the impossible ideal. They blame themselves. There's a clinical term for this in psychology: intermittent reinforcement. It's the exact same mechanism that keeps gamblers glued to slot machines, pulling the lever again and again. Sometimes you win, but most times you lose. And it's the maddening uncertainty of the reward that keeps you hooked. Now, apply this to the landscape of modern dating. A woman texts back immediately for a day, then ghosts for 3. She is affectionate and passionate in private, but distant and cool in public. She whispers, "I love you," in the dark, then forgets your birthday. And men, conditioned for the chase, pursue the high. They dissect every mixed signal, replay every fleeting moment of tenderness, and, like addicts, they endure the crushing lows just for another hit of the good. De Beauvoir saw this dynamic play out in her own tumultuous life. Sartre, her lifelong partner, was notorious for his affairs. He would leave her for younger women, then return when he grew bored or lonely. And every single time she took him back. Why would a woman of such intellect and strength do this? Because even the sharpest, most brilliant minds can be blinded by the culturally ingrained belief that love must hurt to be real. This is not a new sickness. It's an ancient one, a virus in the collective human consciousness. Think of the troubadours of medieval Europe, poets who would starve, freeze, and even die for the love of women who would never touch them. Their suffering was romanticized, turned into art. Or consider the samurai of feudal Japan, who would commit seppuku, slitting their own bellies open, not just for honor, but for unrequited love. Their tragic deaths were celebrated as the ultimate act of devotion. Fast forward to today. Men are still martyring themselves, just in subtler, quieter ways. They work jobs they hate to pay for dates that go nowhere. They swallow their pride and silence their own needs to avoid being labeled as insecure or needy. And the worst part? They have been conditioned to believe this self-abnegation is a form of strength. De Beauvoir warned us of this. Man is defined as a human being and woman as a female. She wrote, "Whenever she behaves as a human being, she is said to imitate the male. But what happens when men start imitating the martyr? They become ghosts, hollowed-out versions of themselves, perpetually chasing a phantom. Here's the hardest truth of all. Love should not feel like war. If you are constantly anxious, constantly trying to earn affection, constantly walking on eggshells, that is not love, that is trauma bonding." De Beauvoir's most radical idea was this: love should be a source of life, not a slow, agonizing suicide. But for that divine possibility to become a reality, men must do the one thing they have been trained their entire lives never to do. Walk away from pain, even when, and especially when, it looks and feels like love. But what if the real enemy isn't women, or even love itself? There is a machine operating in the shadows of our world. You cannot see it with your eyes, but you feel its gears grinding in your soul every single day. It lives in the algorithms of your dating apps, the plot lines of your favorite movies, and the whispered advice from well-meaning friends who tell you to just be more confident. It feeds on your loneliness, your hunger, your silent, gnawing desperation. And the most terrifying part? You have been trained since birth to worship it. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is capitalism. Simone de Beauvoir saw it coming. In The Second Sex, she wrote, "The oppressor would not be so strong if he did not have accomplices among the oppressed. And men in this modern romantic marketplace are the perfect accomplices." Let me show you exactly how this insidious machine works. Every second, somewhere in the world, a man opens his phone and stares at a woman's Instagram profile. She is flawless. Sun-kissed skin, effortless beauty, a life that seems to glow with unattainable perfection. He lingers. He compares his own flawed reality to her curated fantasy. He feels the gnawing ache of not being enough. What he doesn't see is the army of stylists, photographers, and editing apps that constructed that image. He doesn't see the complex financial incentives behind every like, every follow, every carefully curated post that was designed with the sole purpose of keeping him hooked. He just feels the void. And the machine loves the void. Dating apps, porn sites, self-help gurus, they do not profit from your fulfillment. They profit from your hunger. The longer you chase, the more you spend. The more you spend, the more you need. De Beauvoir called this the myth of the eternal feminine, the insidious idea that women are mystical, unknowable creatures to be won rather than human beings to be known. But the modern twist on this myth is even darker. Women are no longer just myths, they are products. And men? They are the ideal consumers. This is not a new strategy. In the 1920s, the American tobacco industry faced a crisis. Women didn't smoke. So, they invented the Torches of Freedom campaign, paying glamorous actresses to light cigarettes in public, framing the act of smoking as a symbol of female liberation. Within a single decade, the number of female smokers skyrocketed. Now, apply that same cynical logic to modern dating. The machine needed men to believe in a fantasy of romantic destiny, so it sold them movies where the hero wins the girl through sheer, unrelenting persistence. It needed men to fear being alone, so it pathologized singlehood as a personal failure. It needed men to keep spending, so it turned love into a game of chance where the house always wins. And men, tragically, swallowed the lie whole. De Beauvoir saw this manipulation with piercing clarity. Representation of the world, like the world itself, is the work of men, she wrote. They describe it from their own point of view, which they confuse with absolute truth. But now, the machine doesn't even need men to describe the world. It does it for them, feeding them a constant stream of images and narratives that reinforce their deepest insecurities. Here is how deep the programming goes. Studies show that men who regularly consume pornography begin to prefer unrealistic body types, the kind that exist only in Photoshop and through plastic surgery. Men who binge-watch romantic comedies start to believe that grand, dramatic gestures matter more than quiet, consistent effort. Men who scroll endlessly through Instagram develop a subconscious expectation that real women should look like filtered fantasies, and when reality fails to match the illusion, they don't blame the machine. They blame themselves. If only I were taller, richer, funnier, they think. Then she'd stay. De Beauvoir warned us, to make oneself an object, to make oneself passive, is a very different thing from being a passive object. But the machine doesn't just make men passive, it makes them complicit in their own destruction. There is only one way out. Men must realize that they are not just players in this game, they are the prize. There is a man standing at the edge of a cliff. It is not a real cliff, but a metaphorical one. A chasm carved out by years of quiet desperation. The wind is howling around him, the ground is crumbling beneath his feet, and behind him, the smoldering ruins of every love he has ever believed in cast long, dancing shadows. He has two choices. He can step back, turn around, and return to the familiar, desolate wasteland of chasing, craving, and collapsing into the arms of women who will never truly see him for who he is. Or he can jump. He can leap into the terrifying, unknown abyss. What waits for him below isn't death. It is something far more frightening to the conditioned mind. It is freedom. Simone de Beauvoir understood this pivotal moment of choice. She called it the moral choice, the instant when a man realizes he has been living a script written by someone else and decides, with a violent act of will, to tear it to pieces. This is where the real story, your story, begins. Let me tell you about a man you know. Maybe he is you. Maybe he is someone you once were. He spent years believing in the one. He thought love was a puzzle, and if he just assembled the right pieces, the right job, the right body, the right amount of charm, he would finally unlock the happy ending he was told he deserved. He read the self-help books. He watched the romantic comedies. He absorbed every single lie the machine fed him about grand gestures and destined soulmates. And then, one day, it happened. He met her. She was perfect. She laughed at all his jokes, touched his arm in that way that made his pulse spike, and mirrored his passions with an eerie, almost supernatural precision. He was sure this was it. 6 months later, she left. There was no warning, no dramatic fight, just a quiet, surgical extraction from his life, as if she had been practicing the exit for months. Here's what he didn't understand at the time. She wasn't the villain. The story was never about her. The story, as de Beauvoir wrote, is that love is not a relation between two people, but a battle between two fantasies. And men, for centuries, have been fighting with imaginary weapons. It is time to lay down those arms. It is time to autopsy the rotting corpse of romantic idealism. Here is the poison you have been fed, and here is the antidote. The first lie: if you love her enough, she'll stay. History is littered with the ghosts of men who loved too much. Van Gogh cut off his own ear for a woman who mocked him. Tolstoy abandoned his genius to please his wife and died a miserable old man, fleeing his own home in the dead of winter. De Beauvoir saw this sickness in Sartre himself. Despite his groundbreaking philosophy of radical freedom, he was utterly enslaved to his need for female validation, hopping from one affair to the next like a man trying to outrun his own emptiness. The truth? Love is not a currency. You cannot save up enough devotion to purchase another person's loyalty. The second lie. The right woman will complete you. This is the most insidious lie of all. It is the idea that a man is somehow an unfinished project until a woman chooses him, validates him, and gives him purpose. It turns the sacred journey of love into a desperate quest for validation rather than a partnership of sovereign equals. De Beauvoir rejected this notion utterly. To be complete, one must first be whole. A man who seeks completion in a woman doesn't find a lover, he finds a crutch. And the third lie, love should be effortless. The machine sold you this fantasy. The rom-coms, the pop songs, the Instagram captions, they are all whispering the same seductive lie. When it's real, it's easy. Bullshit. Real love isn't effortless. It is conscious. It is a daily choice, a constant negotiation between two autonomous beings who refuse to be annihilated, who refuse to vanish into each other. De Beauvoir and Sartre's own relationship was a testament to this. It was messy, painful, and often cruel. But it was real. They didn't hide from the work. Most men, tragically, never learn this. They chase the fleeting high of infatuation, and then they panic when the real work begins. Here it is, the secret no one wants you to know. Love is not about finding, it is about building. And before you can build a life with someone else, you must first build yourself. De Beauvoir called this authenticity. It is the act of becoming a man who doesn't need love to feel alive, but who chooses it to feel even more so. This is the man who doesn't chase, he attracts. This is the man who doesn't beg, he selects. This is the man who doesn't lose himself in love, he finds himself there. Here is how you become that man. 1. Embrace the void. Most men run from solitude because they fear what they will find in the silence. Sit with it. Let the silence teach you who you are when no one is watching. 2. Choose. Don't chase. Most relationships begin with a man auditioning for a woman's attention. Reverse it. You are the prize. You are the one who decides if she meets your standards. 3. Love like a philosopher. De Beauvoir didn't believe in unconditional love. She believed in chosen love, the kind that demands accountability, respect, and mutual growth. Adopt this ruthlessness. Back on the cliff, the man hesitates. The wind screams, and the ruins behind him whisper familiar, tempting lies. What if the next one is different? What if you're just not trying hard enough? He closes his eyes and jumps. For a moment, there is nothing but falling then. Impact. But it is not the shattering he expected. It is something else entirely. It is solid ground. The fall wasn't death, it was birth. As de Beauvoir so brilliantly said, one is not born, but rather becomes a man. This is how. Drop Liebert in the comments below, because the first step to breaking the chains that bind your soul is admitting they exist.